World Wrestling Federation.
Coming soon to your homes, it's WWF 1997, the video game. Dominate the arena with your favorite superstars. Smash your opponent's skull into a steel cage. Play up to 4 players at the same time. Deliver high-flying moves off the top rope, or destroy your opponent with a steel chair. Play as your favorite legends such as Rick Deal and Dean Cooper, or play as any of the 30 superstars available. This summer, experience wrestling like you've never experienced before. View instant replays, perform real-life finishing moves, and create legendary matches that will live in your memories forever. WWF 1997, the video game, coming exclusively to the Nintendo 64.
And now, the WWF King of the Ring.
The 1993 King of the Ring pay-per-view would once again feature an 8-man tournament. Chuck Diamond would make it to the finals, defeating Biff Hammer by disqualification and also defeating Franco Sanchez, while adding further insult by attacking Franco's manager, Lita. Kid Andy would meet Chuck Diamond in the King of the Ring finals, defeating Navajo Black in a very fast-paced match, and also pinning the previous year's King of the Ring winner, Blake Saturn, shocking and exciting the audience in attendance. In the King of the Ring finals, Franco Sanchez had interfered and unintentionally striked Kid Andy. Chuck Diamond capitalized on this mistake and defeated Kid Andy with a devastating chair shot, becoming the 3rd WWF King of the Ring winner. This would spark the feud between Chuck Diamond and Franco Sanchez. The WWF title match that night would see the Monster come close to winning the WWF title against Dean Cooper. However, Blake Saturn would interfere in the last second, attacking the Monster and resulting in Dean Cooper retaining the WWF Championship.
SummerSlam Spectacular!
SummerSlam 3 would see Franco Sanchez getting payback against Chuck Diamond. As his manager Lita would become a lot more involved in this feud, she would assist with Franco's victory. Jacob Cassidy would unsuccessfully defend the United States Championship against Crusher, losing the title belt for the first time since it was obtained at the 1986 event Judgment Day. This 7-year title reign would be the longest for any title belt in WWF history.
I'd known Crusher since the 80s, back when he was known as Steel. He had a reputation of being the toughest son of a bitch in the locker room, but I didn't take him too seriously in the ring, and he taught me a very valuable lesson. Never underestimate your opponent.
Biff Hammer would make his second appearance, dominating Damien Hell in less than 2 minutes. After the match, the audience went quiet in disbelief. SummerSlam 3 would feature the first ever Hell in a Cell match, where the Monster and Blake Saturn would settle their score. This match had to be pre-taped before appearing on the live pay-per-view, as it had to be heavily edited due to the extreme blood and violence displayed. The Monster would exact his revenge that night. In the main event of the night, Dean Cooper would defend both the Intercontinental and the WWF Championship belts in a 2 falls triple threat match against Chris Hammer and Mr. Macho. The first fall had seen Chris Hammer pinning Mr. Macho to win the Intercontinental title. The second and final fall would see Mr. Macho pinning Chris Hammer, winning the WWF title for the first time. Ironically, Dean Cooper would lose both titles that night, but had never been pinned or tapped out to a submission. On the 15th of November, Raw is War event, Biff Hammer would challenge Mr. Macho for the WWF title.
I knew he was a big, scary dude, but I did not realize just how powerful Biff was. I was a fool to accept that title match.
Biff Hammer would defeat Mr. Macho that night, winning the WWF title.
Biff Hammer was, and still is, the most dangerous competitor in the history of wrestling. When he left RFW, former WWF champion Buddy Thorne took him under his wing. Biff trained so fucking hard, his body mass doubled within months.
The following week, on Monday Night Raw, Biff Hammer would cost his brother the Intercontinental title against Chuck Diamond. This would lead to Chris Hammer challenging his brother for the WWF title at the Survivor Series.
My brother and I used to be a tag team back in the day, but his jealousy towards me would put an end to that. Biff Hammer joined the WWF to not only capture the heavyweight title, but to bring me down and humiliate me.
And now, Nestle Crunch presents WWF Survivor Series, Deadly Game.
On the 28th of November, the Survivor Series would make its first annual appearance. This event would see a range of matches, mostly revolving around revenge and survival. Father Bruiser would make his WWF return, defeating the Intercontinental Champion, Chuck Diamond, by countout. Jacob Cassidy would defeat Sergeant John Gilbert in the first ever submission-only match, which was in a steel cage. Dean Cooper and Mr. Macho would also go face-to-face, as both men were determined to prove who the better wrestler was. Mr. Macho had been the last one standing, as he savagely attacked and injured Dean Cooper.
That asshole injured me so bad. It would be almost a year until I was fully recovered and allowed to wrestle again.
Do I regret what I did to Cooper? No. Next question.
The WWF champion Biff Hammer would face the challenger Chris Hammer. In this highly anticipated match, Biff Hammer would shock the world, defeating his brother Chris Hammer by submission and retaining the WWF title.
My brother and I had always trained together when we were younger. I had not seen Biff for quite a few years, as we went our separate ways. He despised the fact that I was more successful over the years, and he always considered me to be a sellout. He beat me fair and square that night. I was afraid to fight him again. I had to train harder and conquer my fears.
The 1994 event, Royal Rumble, had seen many feuds continuing to escalate. New allies were beginning to emerge, older rivals were only growing larger. Biff Hammer would defend the WWF title that night against the Monster in an Extreme Rules match. This was Biff's toughest match yet, as the Monster would simply not stay down. Biff eventually tamed the Beast and had successfully defended the WWF Championship. In the main event that night, the Royal Rumble, the WWF's top talent would compete for a chance at facing the WWF champion, Biff Hammer, at WrestleMania 4. Chris Hammer eliminated his final opponent, Bret Hart, to win the Royal Rumble that night. As Chris Hammer celebrated, Biff Hammer would surprise attack Chris and remind him why he is to be the most feared.
Hello, everybody! Welcome to WrestleMania 4!
WrestleMania 4 would once again become a sold-out event and feature a large variety of match types and stipulations. The team of Owen Rocker and Bret Hart, the Hit Squad, would be the new tag team champions, defeating Nation of Domination members Vice Vincent and Azrael Aries in a ladder match. Kid Andy would face Mr. Macho for their SummerSlam 3 rematch. Mr. Macho would once again be victorious.
The Kid always put up a great fight. It was never enough for Mr. Macho, though.
Jacob Cassidy had successfully defended the United States Championship against Sergeant John Gilbert in a ladder match. This would see Crusher switching sides with the new U.S. champion.
Sergeant Gilbert was poison, and I'm glad I did the right thing in the end. Jacob Cassidy showed me how to be a proud American.
Lilith Jacksonville faces the women's champion, Miss Kitty, and wins back the WWF Women's title after her loss at WrestleMania 3.
She truly was a great athlete. I do feel sad. We'll never again wrestle.
On May 11, 1996, Miss Kitty, Katrina Masala, had sadly passed away after being mauled by her pet tiger. Chuck Diamond and Franco Sanchez would continue their rivalry. This would have a bizarre stipulation where if Chuck Diamond wins, he gets Lita's services for one night. Franco Sanchez had lost by disqualification.
Man, she was a wild one. I know she secretly wanted Franco to lose.
The monster would battle it out against Father Bruiser. But as the Nation of Domination faction had interfered, Father Bruiser would get disqualified for attacking the referee and then proceeding to relentlessly beat the monster with a steel chair.
Damn. I mean, who isn't afraid of the monster? I had to use my homies at the time and, well, I have no shame in admitting that.
And in the main event of the evening, Chris Hammer would seek to win the title back against the WWF champion, Biff Hammer, in an I Quit match. Brother against brother. Neither of them would hold back on their attacks and attempts to make the other say the words, "I quit." As the match would go on, the two brothers would become more aggressive and desperate to end the battle once and for all. Chris Hammer would strike the final blow, making Biff Hammer whisper the final words and winning the WWF Championship for the third time in his career.
When I beat my brother, it wasn't so much about winning the WWF Championship. It was more about conquering my fears. As kids, when we used to train, he would always beat the crap out of me. And for once in my life, I beat the crap out of him and made him admit it.
Out of shame and embarrassment, Biff Hammer would exit the company, at least for now. As the months went by that year, Bret Hart would win the 4th ever King of the Ring tournament, making Sergeant John Gilbert tap out to the sharpshooter in the finals. That same night, Franco Sanchez would be betrayed by his longtime lover, Lita, assisting Chuck Diamond with winning the Intercontinental title for the second time. Chuck Diamond's Intercontinental title reign would not last long. At the hottest event of the year, SummerSlam 4, Kid Andy would win his first ever championship belt, defeating Chuck Diamond for the Intercontinental title. Jacob Cassidy would lose the US title to Father Bruiser, as the Nation of Domination would constantly interfere and distract the referee during the match. In the main event, Mr. Macho would define all odds and defeat Chris Hammer to win the WWF title for a second time with the assistance from Dean Cooper. With the new champion expecting an alliance, Dean Cooper would then attack Mr. Macho. At Survivor Series 94, Aaron Styles would break a world record for the fastest pinfall in WWF history, pinning Sergeant John Gilbert in less than 7 seconds. Bruce Tyler would win his first singles championship, defeating the high-flying Kid Andy to win the Intercontinental title for the first time. The Hit Squad would face Nation of Domination members Vice Vincent and Azrael Aries for the #1 contender spot for the tag team titles. During the match, Owen would eventually snap and leave Bret Hart on his own, resulting in the Nation of Domination gaining the victory and then following with the breaking up of the Hit Squad team. Chris Hammer would become the #1 contender for the WWF title, defeating the Monster, Senor Brutus, and Jacob Cassidy in a fatal four-way match. In the main event that night, Mr. Macho would defend the WWF title against Dean Cooper. Both superstars would give it their all to prove who is worthy of the championship. After a hellacious match, Dean Cooper would gain the pinfall, winning the WWF title for the third time in his career. Despite losing the WWF title, Mr. Macho would congratulate the new champion as a sign of good sportsmanship. The first pay-per-view event of 1995, the Royal Rumble, would see a grudge match between Owen Rocker and Bret the Hitman Hart. After both former friends and tag team champions would attempt to out-wrestle one another, Owen Rocker would suddenly get Bret in a roll-up pin and gain the victory, shocking the audience in attendance. Team USA members Aaron Styles and Crusher defeated Team Money members Sokolov and Mr. Money Butcher for the tag team titles. After the match, Nation of Domination members Vice Vincent and Azrael Aries would viciously attack the new tag team champions. Shortly after, Jacob Cassidy would be attacked by Sergeant John Gilbert during his entrance in his match against Father Bruiser for the United States title. This sneak attack would give Father Bruiser the upper hand, and unsurprisingly, retaining the United States title that night. Donald the Clown would make his in-ring debut against Bob Orndorff, dominating his opponent and asserting his large presence in the WWF. In an incredible technical bout, Franco Sanchez would deliver one of his best performances, winning the Intercontinental title for a second time against Bruce Tyler. Bret Hart would overcome all odds and win the Royal Rumble, becoming the #1 contender for the WWF title at WrestleMania 5. Dean Cooper would once again face Chris Hammer for the WWF Championship. Both superstars would put each other through hell and back. Chris Hammer would only just barely defeat his opponent to once again become the WWF champion for the fourth time in his career. After Dean Cooper showed his respect and honor to the new champion, Chris Hammer shockingly hit Dean Cooper with the title belt. The fans were not impressed with this outcome, booing Chris Hammer for the very first time.
Feel like being one of the cool kids? Want that girl to finally notice you? Or do you need a good disguise to wear for when you rob your next liquor store? Want those bullies to finally stop picking on you? Get your official WWF merchandise now. Only available at WWFshop.com. Clothing may contain traces of dead cockroaches, mice, bats, snake venom, World War II veterans, Ebola, AIDS, plutonium, and human feces.
The Mega Power! Explode! Here at WrestleMania 5!
WrestleMania 5 would open with a no disqualification tag team title match. The Rockers would make their return to the WWF and would challenge the tag team champions. Unfortunately for them, Team Money would gain the pinfall and successfully retain the tag team titles. After WrestleMania 5, the Rockers would be arrested after a bar fight and would fail a drug test. Due to WWF's strict policies, both men were forced to exit the company. Donald the Clown would once again make his presence known in the WWF, defeating the Mexican veteran, Senor Brutus, and then unmasking him after the match.
This brought a lot of shame to not only me and my legacy, but to my family name. It would take years for me to be allowed to wear the mask again.
Franco Sanchez would defend the Intercontinental title in a triple threat match against Chuck Diamond and Bruce Tyler. Unfortunately for Franco, he would be the first to get eliminated. Chuck Diamond would get distracted when his girlfriend Lita would be mysteriously taken away by Donald the Clown and Beth, leaving Bruce Tyler to take advantage of the situation and win the Intercontinental title. After the match, it was believed that Lita had been killed in the exploding car. After many police investigations, it turned out Lita had luckily escaped and kept herself far away from the WWF. The WWF were unable to fire Donald the Clown or Beth, and they were never successfully charged by local authorities as there was insufficient evidence. James Lionheart had signed a new contract with the WWF and made his first official appearance teaming up with Team USA's Jacob Cassidy and Crusher, defeating the Nation of Domination in a six-man tag team match. After this defeat, Sergeant John Gilbert would confront Father Bruiser and question his leadership. Father Bruiser would attack Gilbert, but the Nation of Domination members would turn on Bruiser, leaving him to be slapped and humiliated. Lilith Jacksonville would lose the championship belt to Donald the Clown's associate, Beth. This upset would not sit well with the WWF executives and partners due to the abduction of Lita and the car explosion earlier in the night. Longtime rivals, the Monster and Mr. Macho, would square off in an Extreme Rules match. The Monster would unleash the Fury, absolutely destroy his opponent, and gain the victory. After the match, Mr. Macho would become seriously injured and out of action until his next return. Sergeant John Gilbert once again faces Aaron Styles, only this time it would be for the United States title in a no disqualification match. Gilbert would relentlessly attack his opponent until Aaron would eventually tap out, leaving Sergeant John Gilbert to retain the United States title. After the match, Nation of Domination members would start beating up Aaron until his Team USA members came to the rescue. In the main event that evening, Chris Hammer would defend the WWF title against Royal Rumble winner Bret the Hitman Hart. Both superstars would put up a colossal fight until the very end. Multiple interferences by the Monster and Owen Rocker would only slightly disrupt the match. When Chris Hammer was given the choice to hit Bret with the steel chair, he showed great honor and refused to follow through. Unfortunately for Chris, this would be his downfall. Bret Hart would eventually lock his opponent in the sharpshooter, winning the WWF title for the very first time.
If there was one man who deserved to carry the torch, it was Bret the Hitman Hart. He truly is the best there is. But the best there was and ever will be, I guess time will tell.
With Bret Hart winning the WWF Championship and becoming the new face of the company, this would pave the way for a new generation of wrestlers and future champions here in the WWF. As the WWF continues to expand, within 1 year we would see legends retire, friends become foes, and serious controversies begin to arise. This concludes the WWF Documentary, Volume 2, 1993 to 1995. Thank you for watching. This has been a WWF paid presentation